Beacon Press Audio presents The Golden 13, How Black Men Won the Right to Wear Navy Gold by Dan Goldberg. This audiobook is narrated by Sam Manuel. Published by Beacon Press Audio, 2020. Chapter 1. We're Sending You Up to Great Lakes. Jesse Arbor, a cheeky and irreverent 28-year-old, was sweeping for mines off the coast of New England and helping direct ships to their berths in the fall of 1943 when he learned he had been selected to serve aboard the USS Mason. The Mason, an Everett's-class destroyer escort, was going to be the first warship in U.S. history to boast a black crew. He would finally see real action on the open sea, not just operate off the coast. My chest flew wide open because I was so proud, Arbor recalled. Arbor was just a tad over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and powerful thighs, that gave the 200-pound football stud surprising agility. He had enlisted in the Navy the year before, only a few months after it was announced that black men could try for a general service rating, the first time the Navy allowed them to do more than cook, clean, and serve white men aboard ship. Black men could now train as gunner's mates, machinist mates, quartermasters, and electricians. After 12 weeks of boot camp, where Navy customs and regulations were so drilled into his consciousness that they became second nature, Arbor had spent 16 weeks at quartermaster school. He studied navigation, flashing light communications, sextants, compasses, steering, and other nautical skills at Great Lakes Naval Training Station in Great Lakes, Illinois, close to where his parents lived in Chicago. He was a middling student at Great Lakes, graduating in April 1943 as a quartermaster third class, the lowest rating for new navigation experts. His first assignment was at a receiving station in Boston, where he spent August and September aboard the USS Bulwark, an eccentric-class coastal minesweeper, a relatively small ship designed for protecting harbors and bays. The crew left between 5:30 and 6 every morning and spent 8 hours sweeping for mines in the cold, choppy waters off New England. This could be dull work, but it was still considered a plum gig for a black man at the time. Many black sailors with the same training spent their days waxing floors in the barracks, washing pants, and cleaning toilets, a reminder of the racism that governed social relations in 20th century America as it fought for democracy abroad. Though black men had been training for the general service ratings for more than a year, the Navy had thus far limited their assignments to shore establishments or guarding the coast. But the Mason was no minesweeper. This was a warship that would patrol the Atlantic, fending off German U-boats. This was where the action was. By the end of 1942, U-boats had sunk nearly 1,200 U.S. merchant vessels, attempting to supply Great Britain with military equipment, food, and fuel. The supply lines were key to winning the war, and the Navy developed destroyer escorts such as the Mason to combat German submarines. The destroyers carried depth charges and anti-submarine weapons known as hedgehogs. They had mounted 3-inch 50 caliber guns as well as anti-aircraft guns. They had sophisticated tracking equipment that used high-frequency radio, radar, and sonar. No black man had ever worked as a quartermaster on a ship like this. The height of Arbor's ambition was to be a quartermaster aboard the Mason, where he could play an active role in defending his country. Maybe one day he could even earn a promotion to chief quartermaster. That he would help break a color barrier by serving on the first warship with a black crew only added to his excitement. Arbor's bags were already packed when orders suddenly changed. He was told that he would not be going aboard the Mason. He wasn't told why. He could barely contain his rage, and the news that he had been given leave for Christmas did little to assuage his disappointment. When Arbor returned to Boston from a trip home to Chicago, the first thing he did was to wash his clothes. To pass the time, he started playing poker with some of his Navy buddies. Sitting in his skivvies, Arbor heard someone say that he needed to report to the officer of the deck. Annoyed, he didn't even look up. "Hell, I just left there," he said. No answer. When Arbor finally raised his head, he realized he was addressing a commander. He stood at attention. "Sir, I don't have anything to put on. In a few minutes, it'll be out of the washing machine, and then I've got to dry something." The officer turned and left. Arbor sat down, But before the next hand was dealt, another officer appeared. "Jesse Arbor, you're wanted by the officer of the deck on the double." Arbor realized no one was interested in his laundry. He borrowed a uniform and rushed out. On the steps, he was met by a captain who handed him a sealed brown envelope. "You have 10 minutes to get your sea bag lashed up," he said. "There's a car sitting down below to take you to Back Bay Station. In 35 minutes, you're going back to Chicago." That wasn't enough time to pack, so Arbor didn't bother. He grabbed, borrowed, and stole what he could. Bell-bottom trousers, an undressed blue jumper, and a pea coat that didn't quite fit. His mind was racing. Why was he being sent back to Chicago? Was he in trouble? He remembered that he had once been in a car accident on the corner of 51st and South Park. He had been driving an old Pontiac, and he wrecked a doctor's Packard. Maybe he was being sent back to answer for that. When Arbor arrived at Chicago's Union Station, a Beaux-Arts masterpiece near the Loop, a sailor greeted him, and the two drove 35 miles north to Great Lakes, the headquarters of the 9th Naval District. Arbor was shown to a barracks where a couple other black men were waiting. John Reagan also had hopes that he would finally see some action. He had been in the Navy for 18 months, an electrician's mate of some repute who had impressed his superiors at Hampton Institute in Virginia, home to a segregated training station led by Lieutenant Commander Edwin Hall Downs. Reagan had spent 1943 aboard the USS Firefly, an auxiliary minesweeper stationed out of Naval Base Point Loma, California. At the end of the year, he was ordered to Norfolk Naval Operating Base in Virginia, so he could be an electrician aboard the Mason. Back in Virginia and brimming with excitement, Reagan ran into his old boss, Downs, who by then had been promoted to commander. Downs asked Reagan what he was doing back in Virginia. Reagan stuck out his chest and declared, "I'm going aboard this DE, destroyer escort, as an AC, electrician's mate. I'm going to get a ship at last." "The hell you are," Downs replied. "Come over here to the personnel office and I'll get your orders changed. You come over to my quarters at the school this afternoon or evening and I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on." Reagan followed up with Downs, but the commander was coy. "We're sending you up to Great Lakes for a special class. It's something that you'll like. You'll be glad you're going. It might lead to something you never suspected." James Hare suspected little when he was told to report to Great Lakes. He had been working out of the Brooklyn Navy Yard as a quartermaster on a tugboat, the USS Penobscot, and enjoying the life of a young single sailor in New York City. A short-a-ship call came. "Transfer James Hare to 90 Church Street immediately upon docking." The massive building between Vesey and Barclay Streets near New York City Hall served as the headquarters for the 3rd Naval District. Hare reported and announced himself. He was given little regard, just a large brown envelope sealed with red wax, a train ticket, and no explanation. He was told to proceed immediately to Great Lakes Naval Training Station and report to Commander Daniel W. Armstrong, a white officer in charge of the segregated Camp Robert Smalls. The camp had been designated for black men almost 2 years before to accommodate the Navy's new enlistees after Pearl Harbor. Hare hustled uptown to Penn Station and, exhausted, fell asleep while waiting at the gate. The next sound he heard was the porter yelling, "All aboard!" Hare grabbed his gear and ran along the narrow platform toward the departing train, which was beginning to pull away. He screamed at the porter, at anyone who could help, as he tried to jump aboard the moving train before he ran out of platform. Just before he did, he threw on his bags and climbed inside. Breathless, Hare found a seat as the train headed west under the Hudson River into New Jersey before making its way through Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. The train pulled into Chicago after midnight, and Hare arrived at Great Lakes around 1 a.m. The officers there didn't know what to make of this young man. Hare couldn't provide much help. All he knew was that he had orders to see Commander Armstrong. But Armstrong was asleep, and no one was going to wake the commander for a confused black man clutching a brown envelope. Hare was sent to sickbay, the only area where there was a bed available, and was told he could see Armstrong in the morning. When the sun rose the next morning, Sam Barnes was given an order he did not understand. Armstrong had ordered him to the main side, the white side of the station, where senior officers worked. the only type African American.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?